The transmission came through at 3 in the morning, Standard Galactic Time.
Captain Vren Chorus of the Unified Planetary Alliance sat up straight in his command chair, his blue skin turning pale as the words registered in his translator. The Dominion fleet had crossed the outer boundary.
400 warships. Maybe more. The long-range sensors could not give an exact count because there were simply too many signals overlapping. How long until they reached the colony worlds?
Vren asked, his voice steady despite the cold fear spreading through his chest. 14 hours, his tactical officer replied.
Maybe 12 if they push their engines.
Vren closed his 4 eyes and let out a breath.
The colony worlds held 60 million civilians. Farmers. Teachers. Children.
His fleet had 37 ships. Good ships with brave crews, but 37 against 400 was not a battle.
It was a slaughter waiting to happen.
Send a distress call to the Alliance Command, he ordered.
Tell them we need reinforcements. Sir, the nearest Alliance fleet is 3 days away.
Even at maximum speed, they cannot arrive in time.
Vren knew this.
He had known it the moment he saw the sensor readings.
But he had hoped. Hope was all he had left.
There is another option, his communications officer said quietly. She was young, barely past her training years, and her hands trembled as she spoke.
We could send a call to the humans.
The bridge went silent. Every officer turned to look at her, and she shrank back from their stares. The humans, Vren repeated slowly.
You want us to ask the humans for help?
I know what the stories say, she continued, her voice growing smaller.
I know they are dangerous.
But they are also the only ones who might come in time. They have a listening post 2 hours from here.
If we send a distress signal on their frequency, they might respond. Vren thought about this. He had never met a human. Few species had and lived to describe the experience in detail. The humans were not part of the Alliance.
They did not sign treaties or attend diplomatic meetings. They existed on the edges of known space, appearing only when war touched their borders. The stories about them were the kind that parents told children to make them behave.
They said humans did not feel fear.
They said humans would fight until their bodies broke and, then, keep fighting with the broken pieces. They said humans smiled before they killed you and thanked you for the good fight afterward. But the stories also said something else.
They said humans protected the weak.
They said if you asked them for help and your cause was just, they would come.
They would come even if it meant their own destruction.
Send the call, Vren decided.
Tell them everything. The Dominion fleet, the colony worlds, the civilians. Tell them we cannot win alone.
The communications officer nodded and turned to her console. Her fingers moved across the controls, and, a moment later, a signal shot out into the darkness of space.
2 hours passed.
Vren paced the bridge, checking the sensor readings every few minutes.
The Dominion fleet continued its advance.
His own ships formed a defensive line around the colony worlds, but he knew it would not hold.
They would fight. They would die. And, then, the civilians would die too.
Captain, the communications officer called out suddenly.
We have a response.
Vren rushed to her station.
What does it say?
She looked up at him with wide eyes.
It says, acknowledged. Ghost Actual is en route. Hold the line. Ghost Actual? Vren asked. What does that mean?
His tactical officer pulled up a database on his console and searched through the records. His face went pale.
Sir, Ghost Actual is a human call sign.
It belongs to, it says here she has no recorded name.
Just the call sign. She is listed as a solo operative, classified at the highest level of threat assessment. 1 human? They are sending 1 human against 400 ships? I do not know, sir. But, the records show that wherever this call sign appears, entire fleets have disappeared. The Vorthan Armada.
The Crimson Empire's invasion force.
The machines of the Collective. All destroyed. All by her. Vren did not know what to believe.
One person could not destroy 400 ships.
It was impossible.
But something in the way his officer spoke made him want to believe it anyway.
How long until she arrives? He asked. The message did not say. It only said to hold the line. Then, that is what we will do.
Vren returned to his command chair and opened a channel to his fleet. All ships, this is Captain Chorus.
Reinforcements are coming. I need you to hold your positions until they arrive. We fight today not for victory but for time. Every minute we give them is another minute for our people to survive. Hold the line. The responses came back one by one. 36 captains acknowledging his orders.
36 ships preparing to face impossible odds. Vren felt proud of them.
They knew they would probably die, and they were choosing to fight anyway.
The Dominion fleet arrived 2 hours earlier than expected. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their black ships spreading across space like a stain.
Vren counted them as they appeared. 412 ships.
More than the sensors had predicted.
All ships, weapons free, Vren ordered. Fire at will. The battle began. Energy beams crisscrossed the void. Missiles streaked toward their targets.
Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Vren watched his tactical display and saw his fleet dying.
1 ship gone. Then, 2. Then, 5. The Dominion ships took damage too, but not enough. Never enough.
Sir, we have lost 12 ships, his tactical officer reported.
Enemy losses are minimal. They are breaking through our line.
Vren gripped the arms of his chair.
All ships, close formation. Protect the colony worlds at all costs.
They fought for another hour. Vren lost count of how many of his people died. The Dominion fleet pushed closer and closer to the planets behind him. He could hear the communications from the colonies, the panic in their voices as they watched the battle in their skies. And then, everything changed.
A single ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel.
It appeared directly in the center of the Dominion formation, so close to their flagship that the two nearly collided.
It was small. Tiny, really. A human vessel no larger than a heavy fighter.
It should not have been able to survive even a single hit from the massive warships surrounding it.
But it did not take a single hit.
The human ship moved like nothing Vren had ever seen. It twisted and spun through the enemy formation, dodging fire that should have been impossible to avoid. And, as it moved, it struck back.
The first Dominion cruiser exploded. Then, another. Then, 3 more.
The human ship was cutting through them like a blade through water, leaving destruction in its wake.
How? Vren whispered. How is she doing this?
I do not know, his tactical officer replied. His voice was shaking. Her weapons, they are not standard. I have never seen energy signatures like these. It is like she is using the ships against themselves.
The Dominion fleet tried to respond.
They turned their weapons on the human ship, filling space with so much fire that nothing should have survived. But the human ship was never where the fire landed. It was always somewhere else, always moving, always killing. Vren watched the battle unfold and realized he was seeing something impossible.
1 ship against 400. 1 pilot against an entire fleet. And the one was winning.
Captain, his communications officer said.
We are receiving a transmission from the human ship. Audio only. Put it through.
A voice filled the bridge. It was female, calm and steady, with a strange accent that Vren's translator struggled to process.
Alliance fleet, this is Ghost Actual.
Fall back to the colony worlds and begin evacuation procedures.
I will handle the Dominion. Ghost Actual, this is Captain Chorus. How can 1 ship handle 400?
There was a pause, and then the voice came back.
Vren could hear something in it now. Something cold.
Because they brought 400, Captain.
They should have brought more. The transmission ended.
Vren stared at his display and watched the human ship continue its impossible dance of destruction. She had no recorded name. Only a call sign that traveled with war.
And now he understood why.
She was not just a soldier.
She was something else. Something the galaxy had forgotten how to be.
She was a weapon that had chosen its own targets. A force that had decided which side of history it would stand on. And, today, she had chosen to stand with them.
The Dominion fleet began to retreat.
Their ships turned and fled, faster than light drives activating as they tried to escape the small ship that was tearing them apart.
But Ghost Actual followed.
She chased them into the darkness, and the explosions continued even after Vren could no longer see them on his sensors. When the silence finally came, 187 Dominion ships had been destroyed. The rest had scattered across 3 sectors, their formation broken beyond repair. Vren's fleet had lost 15 ships and 2,200 crew members. It was a terrible price, but it was a fraction of what it should have been. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly.
"The human ship is returning." Vren watched his display as the small vessel approached.
It moved slowly now, and he could see damage on its hull. Scorch marks and impact craters. She had not escaped the battle unharmed after all. She had simply kept fighting despite the damage.
"Ghost Actual, this is Captain Chorus. Do you require assistance?"
The voice came back, still calm, still steady.
"Negative, Captain. I have repair capabilities.
But I wanted to confirm the colony worlds are safe."
"They are. Because of you." Vren paused. "I do not know how to thank you."
"You saved 60 million lives today."
Another pause. When the voice returned, it carried something new. Something almost sad.
"I do not need thanks, Captain.
I need you to remember what happened here today.
When the war spreads and more fleets come, remember that one ship stood against 401.
Remember that the Dominion is not invincible. They can be beaten. They can be destroyed. You just need to believe it is possible." "Who are you?" Vren asked. "Not your call sign. Who are you really?"
The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, the voice spoke, quiet and distant. "I do not remember anymore, Captain.
I have been fighting so long that the person I was before is gone. All that remains is what I do. All that remains is the war." The human ship turned and began to move away.
Vren watched it go, the small vessel that had done the impossible. He wanted to call out, to say something more, but he did not know what words would be enough. "Sir," his tactical officer said.
"I am receiving reports from the colony worlds. The civilians are celebrating. They are calling her a hero."
"She would not like that," Vren said softly.
"She is not doing this for glory.
She is doing it because she does not know how to stop."
"What do you mean?" Vren thought about the sadness in her voice.
The loneliness of someone who had forgotten their own name. She has been at war for so long that peace has become the stranger. She fights because fighting is all she has left. And she protects the weak because somewhere, buried under all that violence, there is still something human inside her. He stood from his command chair and walked to the main view screen. The human ship was just a dot now, moving toward the edge of the system. "Send a message to Alliance Command," he ordered.
"Tell them what happened here. Tell them about Ghost Actual.
And tell them that if the Dominion comes again, we know who to call." His communications officer nodded and began typing.
Vren continued to watch the view screen until the dot disappeared entirely.
Somewhere out there, a woman with no name was heading toward the next battle.
The next impossible fight.
The next chance to prove that even in a universe of darkness, there were still those who would stand against it. She had no recorded name. Only a call sign that traveled with war.
And, as long as the war continued, she would continue with it.
The Dominion High Command met in emergency session 3 days after the defeat at the Colony Worlds. The chamber was vast, built to accommodate the physical forms of the 7 species that made up the ruling council. Their bodies were different, their minds were different, but their purpose was united. They existed to conquer, to expand, to consume everything in their path until there was nothing left to consume. The Supreme Commander of the fleet sat at the head of the table. He was Vorthan by birth, a massive creature with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that had watched entire civilizations burn. He had commanded armies for 300 years.
He had never known defeat. Until now.
"Explain to me," he said, his voice rumbling like thunder, "how one ship destroyed 187 of our vessels." The admiral who had led the retreat stood before him. His scales had turned pale with fear, and his hands trembled as he spoke.
"Supreme Commander, I have reviewed the battle recordings.
The human ship moved faster than our targeting systems could track. Her weapons penetrated our shields as if they did not exist. Our ships could not coordinate because she disrupted our communications.
We were fighting blind against an enemy we could not hit."
"One ship," the Supreme Commander repeated.
"One pilot." "Yes, Supreme Commander." "And you ran." The admiral dropped to his knees. "We had no choice.
If we had stayed, she would have destroyed us all. I saved what remained of the fleet. I saved." The Supreme Commander moved faster than something his size should have been able to move. His clawed hand closed around the admiral's throat and lifted him from the ground.
"You saved nothing. You showed the galaxy that the Dominion can be defeated. You showed them that we are not invincible." He squeezed, and the admiral's neck broke with a wet crack.
The body fell to the floor, and the Supreme Commander stepped over it as if it were nothing more than debris.
"Tell me about this human," he said to the others. "Tell me everything we know." An intelligence officer stepped forward. He was collective, a synthetic being with a body made of metal and circuits. His kind had joined the Dominion after their own war against the humans had ended in failure. They had learned from that failure. They had learned to fear. "Her designation is Ghost Actual," the intelligence officer began. "She operates alone, without support from any human government or military organization. Our records indicate she has been active for approximately 47 standard years." 47 years? How old is she? Unknown. Humans have developed technologies that extend their lifespans significantly. She could be anywhere from 50 to several hundred years old. The Supreme Commander considered this. "What do we know about her origins?" "Very little. The humans guard information about her closely. What we have been able to gather suggests she was involved in the First Contact War, the conflict that introduced humanity to the wider galaxy. There are references to a small colony world called New Haven. It was destroyed during the war. Every civilian died except for one. A child. She is the survivor? We believe so. After New Haven, there are no records of her existence for 12 years. Then, the call sign Ghost Actual appears for the first time during the Vorthan Armada's invasion of human space. She destroyed 37 ships in a single engagement. Our predecessors thought it was a malfunction in their sensors. It was not. The Supreme Commander walked to a display screen that showed a map of the galaxy. The Dominion's territory was marked in red, spreading across 3 spiral arms. It was vast. It was powerful. And yet one human had made him feel something he had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. "Why does she fight alone?" he asked. "The humans have fleets. They have armies. Why send one person? We do not know. There are theories. Some believe she is too dangerous to operate with others, that her methods are too extreme even for humans. Others believe she chooses to work alone because she does not trust anyone else to keep up with her. But, the most common theory. Speak. The most common theory is that she is no longer entirely human.
That she has been modified, enhanced, and rebuilt so many times that what remains is closer to a weapon than a person. The humans may use her because she is effective. But they may also keep her at a distance because they are afraid of what she has become. The Supreme Commander turned back to face the Council.
So we face an enemy who cannot be tracked, cannot be hit, and cannot be stopped.
An enemy who has fought for nearly 50 years without rest. An enemy who turned 187 ships into debris fields.
Yes, Supreme Commander. Good.
The council members looked at each other in confusion. The Supreme Commander smiled, his teeth gleaming in the chamber's dim light.
For 300 years, I have searched for an enemy worthy of my attention. I have crushed civilizations that could not fight back.
I have destroyed fleets that surrendered before the battle began. I have grown bored with conquest because there was never any challenge. He placed his hand on the display screen, covering the area where the battle had taken place.
This human. This Ghost Actual. She is the challenge I have been waiting for. She is the enemy who will make my victory meaningful.
Supreme Commander, one of the council members said carefully, with respect, she destroyed nearly half the invasion fleet.
Perhaps we should reconsider our expansion plans. The human territories are well defended, and if she what? If she comes for us?
I hope she does.
I want to face her.
I want to see if she lives up to her reputation. But the losses are acceptable. We will build more ships. We will train more soldiers. And we will find a way to defeat her.
Not because we need to, but because I want to.
He turned to the intelligence officer.
Find out everything you can about this human.
Her tactics, her weaknesses, her patterns. I want to know where she goes between battles.
I want to know what she cares about. Everyone has something they care about.
Find hers.
Yes, Supreme Commander.
And send a message to our fleet commanders.
Tell them the invasion continues.
Tell them we will crush the Alliance and take their worlds. But also tell them that Ghost Actual is now a priority target. The commander who brings me her head will be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. The council chamber erupted in discussion as the members began planning their response. The Supreme Commander ignored them. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars, imagining the small human ship moving through them.
Somewhere out there, his enemy waited.
And, for the first time in 300 years, he was excited.
Ghost Actual drifted in the silence between stars.
Her ship's engines were offline, conserving power while the repair systems worked on the damage from the battle. She sat in the pilot's chair, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and even. The cockpit was small, barely large enough for one person. The walls were covered with screens and displays, most of them dark now. A single light blinked in the corner, indicating that repairs were progressing. In 3 hours, she would be operational again. In 4, she would be ready for the next fight. But, for now, there was only silence. She opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They were covered in scars, old wounds that had healed imperfectly despite the best medical technology available. Some of the scars were from weapons. Others were from surgeries. Her body had been rebuilt so many times that she had lost track of what was original and what was replacement.
Sometimes she wondered if any of it was real anymore.
A message alert flashed on her console. She reached out and activated it, expecting orders from command.
Instead, she saw a personal communication tag.
Someone had sent her a direct message using a frequency that should have been impossible to access. She hesitated, then opened it. The message was text only, but she knew who it was from.
The only person who still used this frequency.
The only person who remembered the girl she had been before Ghost Actual existed. I saw the news about the colony worlds, the message read.
I know it was you. I know you saved them. I wanted you to know that I am proud of you. But, I also wanted to ask you something. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you taking care of yourself? I worry about you. I have always worried about you. Please respond when you can.
With love, as always. She stared at the words for a long time. The message was from Dr. Elena Vasquez, the woman who had found her after New Haven. The woman who had raised her, trained her, and, ultimately helped create the weapon she had become.
Elena was 93 years old now.
She lived on a quiet moon in the outer territories, far from the war, far from the fighting. She spent her days gardening and reading, living the peaceful life that Ghost Actual had given up long ago.
Every few months, Elena sent a message.
Every few months, Ghost Actual read it. But she had not responded in 7 years.
What would she say? That she was fine? That would be a lie. That she was tired? That would be an understatement. That she wanted to stop fighting? That would be impossible.
The war would not let her stop. Every time she thought about retiring, about finding a quiet place like Elena's moon and living out her remaining years in peace, something happened.
Another fleet invaded. Another colony burned. Another million civilians died because no one else could stop the enemy.
She had tried to walk away once, 15 years ago. She had found a small planet with no military value, built a house, planted a garden. For 3 months, she had pretended to be normal. She had made friends with the locals. She had learned to cook. She had started to forget what it felt like to kill. And, then, the collective had found the planet. They had sent a battle group to harvest the population for their work camps. Ghost Actual had destroyed them all, but not before they had killed everyone she had come to care about. After that, she had stopped trying to be normal. She had accepted what she was.
A weapon.
A force of destruction. A ghost that traveled with war.
She began typing a response to Elena's message, then stopped. What could she say that would not worry the old woman more? What words could possibly bridge the gap between the peaceful moon and the blood-soaked cockpit?
In the end, she typed only 3 words, "I am alive."
It was not much.
But it was all she had to give. She sent the message and closed her eyes again. The repair systems hummed around her, putting her ship back together piece by piece. In 3 hours, she would be ready for the next battle. The Dominion was coming. She had seen the intelligence reports, the fleet movements, the war plans.
They were not going to stop because of one defeat.
They were going to keep coming, throwing ships and soldiers at the Alliance until either the Dominion broke or everyone else did.
Ghost Actual knew which outcome was more likely. The Dominion had resources that dwarfed anything the Alliance could muster.
They had conquered half the galaxy through sheer overwhelming force.
They did not need brilliant tactics or advanced technology. They just needed more. And they would always have more.
But she would keep fighting anyway. Not because she thought she could win, but because she did not know how to do anything else. Not because she wanted to be a hero, but because someone had to stand in front of the darkness and refuse to move.
New Haven had taught her that.
The day she had watched her home burn, the day she had seen everyone she loved die, she had made a promise to herself.
She would never let it happen again. Not if she could stop it. Not if there was anything she could do.
47 years later, she was still keeping that promise. The repair systems chimed, indicating that the first phase of repairs was complete. She opened her eyes and began running diagnostics on her weapons systems. The power cells were at 60%. The shields were holding. The targeting computer had recalibrated after the battle, compensating for the damage to its sensors. She was ready.
A new alert appeared on her console. Intelligence from Alliance Command. The Dominion was massing another fleet on the border, larger than the one she had just destroyed. Early estimates suggested 700 ships. Maybe more. 700 ships against one. Ghost Actual smiled.
It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had long ago stopped counting the odds against her. "Let them come," she said to the empty cockpit.
"I will be waiting."
She activated her engines and set a course for the border. Behind her, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance. Ahead of her, another impossible battle waited. And, somewhere in the darkness, a supreme commander was planning her death.
The war continued. And, so did she.
The border station floated in the darkness like a metal island surrounded by an ocean of stars. It was old, built during the first expansion into this sector, and its hull bore the scars of countless repairs and modifications. 2,000 people lived and worked inside its walls, monitoring the space beyond for any sign of Dominion activity.
Commander Sarah Chen stood at the main observation window, watching the distant flashes of light that marked the enemy fleet's position.
They had been sitting there for 3 days, just outside weapons range, watching and waiting. Every hour, more ships arrived to join them.
The count was now past 800.
"They're testing us," said Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her second in command. He was young, barely 30, with the kind of optimistic attitude that had not yet been broken by war.
"They want to see how we react." "They're not testing us," Sarah replied.
"They're building up forces for a full invasion. This station is the first target. Once they take it, they'll have a clear path to the inner colonies."
"So why haven't they attacked yet?" Sarah thought about this question.
She had been asking herself the same thing for 3 days. The Dominion did not hesitate.
They did not wait.
They struck with overwhelming force and crushed everything in their path. That was their strategy, their philosophy, their religion.
So why were they waiting?
"They're afraid of something," she said finally.
"Something out there is making them hesitate." Before Marcus could respond, the station's alarm systems activated.
Red lights flashed throughout the control center, and the tactical display lit up with new contacts.
"Commander, we have incoming," the sensor officer reported.
"Single vessel, approaching at high speed from Sector 7.
It's not responding to our hails."
Sarah felt her heart rate increase.
"What kind of vessel?" "Small. Fighter-sized." "But, the energy signature."
The sensor officer's voice trailed off.
"Commander, I've never seen anything like this. The power output is off the charts." "Is it Dominion?" "Negative. The configuration doesn't match anything in their database."
The officer looked up, his face pale. "Commander, it matches the profile of the ship that destroyed the invasion fleet at the colony worlds 3 weeks ago."
Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had heard the stories about that battle. Everyone in the Alliance had. One ship against 400.
One pilot who had done the impossible.
"Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies."
The communications officer worked his console.
"Channel open, Commander."
Sarah stepped forward and spoke clearly.
"Unidentified vessel, this is Commander Sarah Chen of Border Station Gamma 7.
Please identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came immediately. A woman's voice, calm and professional, with an accent that Sarah's translator had difficulty processing.
"Border Station Gamma 7, this is Ghost Actual. I am here to assess the Dominion threat and provide tactical support if needed. Request permission to dock."
The control center went silent. Every officer turned to look at Sarah, waiting for her response.
She could see the fear in some of their faces, the hope in others. Ghost Actual. The call sign that had become legend in less than a month. Permission granted, Ghost Actual. Dock at Bay 7. I'll meet you personally. Understood. Ghost Actual out.
The channel closed, and Sarah turned to her second in command. "Marcus, you have the control center."
"I'm going to meet our guest." "Commander, are you sure that's wise? We don't know anything about her. The stories say she saved 60 million people. That's enough for me." She left the control center and made her way through the station's corridors. The crew members she passed whispered to each other, word already spreading about the incoming ship. By the time she reached Dock Bay 7, a small crowd had gathered at a safe distance, eager to see the legendary pilot. Sarah waved them back and stood alone at the docking port.
Through the reinforced glass, she could see the small ship maneuvering into position. It was beautiful in a deadly way, its hull sleek and dark, covered with weapons ports and sensor arrays. She counted at least a dozen different weapon systems, more firepower than some capital ships carried. The docking clamps engaged, and the airlock cycled. Sarah straightened her uniform and prepared herself for whatever came through that door. What came through was not what she expected. The woman was smaller than Sarah had imagined. Average height, lean build, with short dark hair that looked like it had been cut with a field knife. Her face was angular and sharp, with high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. She wore a flight suit that had seen better days, patched and repaired in dozens of places. But it was her eyes that caught Sarah's attention. They were gray, the color of steel, and they held a weariness that no amount of sleep could cure. This was someone who had seen too much, fought too long, and carried too many burdens.
"Commander Chen," the woman said. "Thank you for allowing me to dock." "Thank you for coming, Ghost Actual." Sarah hesitated, unsure how to address someone whose name was classified. "What should I call you?" The woman's lips twitched in something that might have been a smile. "Ghost is fine. Most people just call me Ghost." "Ghost it is, then. Please, follow me. I'd like to brief you on our situation."
They walked through the station's corridors, and Sarah noticed how every person they passed stopped to stare.
Some of them whispered. Some of them looked afraid.
But many of them looked at Ghost with something that resembled hope.
"They know who you are," Sarah said quietly. Word spread fast. It always does.
There was no pride in Ghost's voice, only acceptance.
"It does not matter. What matters is the enemy fleet outside your station. 812 ships at last count. Growing every hour. I noticed. They are preparing for a major offensive."
This station is their first objective, but not their final one. They intend to push deep into Alliance territory, taking systems one by one until they reach Earth. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine.
Earth? That's impossible. The inner defenses would stop them. Would they? The Alliance has been weakened by years of smaller conflicts.
Your fleets are spread thin, your resources depleted. The Dominion knows this.
They have been waiting for the right moment to strike.
They reached the command center, and Sarah led Ghost to the main tactical display. The holographic map showed the station, the Dominion fleet, and the vast emptiness between them.
"You said you're here to provide tactical support," Sarah said. "What does that mean exactly?"
Ghost studied the display, her gray eyes moving across the positions of each enemy ship.
"It means I am going to destroy that fleet before they can attack." "You? Alone? Against 800 ships? I have done it before. At the Colony Worlds, you faced 400.
And you had a friendly fleet to distract them.
Here you have nothing but a station that can't move."
Ghost turned to face her.
"Commander, I do not need distractions. I need time.
The Dominion is waiting for something, some signal or reinforcement that has not arrived yet.
I need to know what it is. Can your intelligence team access their communications? We've been trying for 3 days.
Their encryption is too advanced."
"Show me."
Sarah led her to the intelligence section, where a team of specialists had been working around the clock to crack the Dominion's codes.
The lead analyst, a gray-haired man named Dr. Peters, looked up as they approached. "Commander, we've made some progress," he said. "But the encryption matrix is unlike anything we've seen. It would take months to break."
Ghost stepped past him and sat down at one of the consoles. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced speed, pulling up windows and data streams that Sarah could not follow. "They are using a rotating algorithm based on quantum entanglement," Ghost said.
"The key changes every 3 seconds. Standard decryption methods will not work." Then, how Dr. Peters started. "I have encountered this encryption before. During the campaign against the Collective. Give me 10 minutes.
She continued working, her eyes never leaving the screen. Sarah watched in amazement as Ghost bypassed security protocols, decoded data streams, and navigated through the Dominion's communication network with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. Exactly 10 minutes later, Ghost pushed back from the console.
I have their command frequencies. Their communications are now accessible.
Dr. Peters leaned over her shoulder, his eyes wide.
This is incredible. We've been trying for weeks to achieve what you just did in 10 minutes. Experience helps. Ghost stood and turned to Sarah.
Commander, the Dominion fleet is waiting for their Supreme Commander. He is personally leading this invasion.
He intends to be present when they take your station. The Supreme Commander? The one who's been ruling the Dominion for 3 centuries? Yes. He has developed a personal interest in this conflict.
According to their communications, he considers me a worthy opponent.
Ghost's voice was flat, emotionless. He wants to kill me himself. Sarah felt the weight of that statement.
The Supreme Commander was not just a military leader. He was a legend, a monster that had crushed civilizations and exterminated entire species. If he was coming here personally, their situation had just become much more dangerous.
What do we do? She asked. We use his arrogance against him. The Supreme Commander is not accustomed to enemies who fight back.
He expects this to be easy, a simple conquest to demonstrate his power.
We are going to make it very, very difficult.
Ghost walked back to the tactical display and began manipulating the controls. New information appeared on the map, showing projected attack patterns and defensive positions. Your station has limited offensive capabilities, but your defensive systems are adequate.
I want you to power up everything. Shields, point defense, mine deployment systems. Make them think you are preparing for a siege. And what will you be doing?
Ghost's gray eyes met hers, and, for the first time, Sarah saw something there besides weariness.
Something cold and hard and infinitely dangerous. I will be hunting. The Supreme Commander's flagship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the head of a personal guard of 50 ships. It was massive, a kilometer long, covered with weapons and armor that made it nearly invulnerable to conventional attack. The name emblazoned on its hull was untranslatable into any Alliance language, but its meaning was clear. Deathbringer.
Inside the command center, the Supreme Commander stood at the main viewport, watching his fleet assemble.
862 ships now, with more arriving every hour. It was the largest force he had personally commanded in over a century. All for one human. His tactical officer approached, bowing deeply.
Supreme Commander, the border station has activated all defensive systems.
They appear to be preparing for a siege. Let them prepare. It will not matter. When we attack, we will overwhelm them in minutes. Yes, Supreme Commander. However, there is a concern.
Our scouts have detected the human vessel docked at the station.
Ghost Actual is here.
The Supreme Commander smiled, his teeth gleaming.
Good. I was hoping she would come. Order the fleet to hold position. We attack at my command. Supreme Commander, should we not destroy the human vessel while it is docked? It would be an easy target. Easy targets are not worthy of my attention. I want her in space, fighting. I want to see what she can do. And then, I want to destroy her myself. The tactical officer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with this strategy. But he knew better than to argue with the Supreme Commander. Yes, Supreme Commander. I will relay your orders. He withdrew, and the Supreme Commander returned his attention to the viewport. The border station was visible now, a small dot of metal and light against the blackness of space. Somewhere inside that station, his enemy waited. He had studied the recordings from the battle at the colony worlds. He had watched Ghost Actual's impossible maneuvers, her devastating attacks, her complete disregard for the odds against her. He had watched one ship destroy 187 others and emerge damaged but victorious. It had been beautiful.
For 300 years, he had searched for an opponent who could match him. Empires had fallen before his fleets.
Species had been exterminated. Civilizations had been erased from history.
And, through it all, he had felt nothing but boredom. But, watching that human fight, watching her dance through his ships like death incarnate, he had felt something he had not experienced in centuries.
Excitement. Today, he would finally face a worthy enemy.
Today, the hunt would begin. Supreme Commander, his communications officer interrupted.
We are receiving a transmission from the border station. It is directed specifically at your flagship. Put it through.
The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. Human, female, with gray eyes that held no fear.
The Supreme Commander leaned forward, studying every detail of her expression.
Supreme Commander of the Dominion, she said.
I know you came here for me. I know you want to kill me personally. So I am going to give you a choice. A choice? How interesting. Please, continue.
Withdraw your fleet from Alliance space.
Return to your own territory. End this war. If you do this, I will let you live.
The command center went silent. The Supreme Commander stared at the screen, and then he began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the walls and made his officers flinch.
Let me live, he said when the laughter finally subsided. You are offering to let me live? I am. I have destroyed civilizations, human. I have exterminated species.
I have ruled the Dominion for 300 years.
And you, one pilot in one ship, think you have the power to threaten me?
I destroyed nearly half your invasion fleet 3 weeks ago. I did it alone, with a damaged ship, against impossible odds.
Do you really want to find out what I can do when I am prepared?
The Supreme Commander leaned back in his command chair, his eyes never leaving her face.
She was serious.
She genuinely believed she could defeat him.
It was madness. Beautiful, glorious madness. I accept your challenge, Ghost Actual. When the battle is over and your ship is burning debris, I will think about this moment. I will remember that you had the courage to threaten me. It will make your death more satisfying. Then, we have nothing more to discuss. I will see you on the battlefield. The transmission ended.
The Supreme Commander sat in silence for a moment, then turned to his tactical officer.
Order the fleet to attack. All ships, full assault. But, leave the human vessel to me. Anyone who damages her before I give the command will be executed. Yes, Supreme Commander.
The Dominion fleet began to move, 862 ships advancing toward the border station in perfect formation. The Supreme Commander watched them go, his heart beating faster with anticipation.
The hunt had begun.
Ghost undocked from the station and moved into open space. Her ship's systems were fully operational now, every weapon charged, every sensor active. The tactical display showed the Dominion fleet approaching, a wall of red dots that covered the screen. She had faced worse odds before. Not by much, but she had. Her communications system crackled, and Commander Chen's voice came through.
Ghost, we're detecting movement across the entire enemy fleet. They're coming in fast. I see them. Keep your defensive systems active.
They may try to ignore me and attack the station directly.
What about you? Ghost's hands moved across the controls, adjusting her trajectory and weapon settings.
I have a Supreme Commander to kill. She pushed the throttle forward, and her ship leaped toward the enemy fleet. The Dominion ships opened fire almost immediately, filling space with energy beams and missiles. Ghost wove through them, her reflexes and her ship's advanced systems working together to keep her alive. She had been modified extensively over the years. Neural implants connected her brain directly to her ship's systems.
Genetic enhancements made her reflexes faster than any normal human. Cybernetic replacements kept her body functioning long after it should have failed. She was no longer entirely human, not by any biological definition. But she was still alive. And, as long as she was alive, she would fight. The first Dominion ship exploded as her weapons found its reactor. Then, another. Then, 3 more. She cut through their formation like a blade, leaving destruction in her wake. Ghost Actual, this is the Supreme Commander. His voice filled her cockpit, transmitted on all frequencies. I am impressed. You fight as well as the recordings suggested. But, you cannot defeat my entire fleet. Eventually, your luck will run out. It is not luck, Ghost replied, destroying another ship. It is skill. Something your forces clearly lack. Bold words. Let us see if you can back them up. I am opening my defensive formation. Come and face me directly, if you dare. Ghost checked her tactical display and saw the Supreme Commander's flagship. It was surrounded by a ring of escorts, but a path was opening through them, leading directly to the massive vessel. It was obviously a trap. He wanted her close, where his flagship's superior firepower could overwhelm her. He was counting on her pride to make her take the bait. She took it anyway. Her ship accelerated to maximum speed, diving through the gap in the enemy formation. The escorts fired at her, but she was moving too fast, too unpredictably. She passed through their line and emerged in the clear space around the flagship. The Deathbringer was even more impressive up close. Its weapons ports glowed with charged energy, ready to fire. Its hull was covered with armor so thick that most weapons would barely scratch it. Most weapons. Ghost activated her primary weapon system, the one she had been saving for this moment. It was not standard Alliance technology. It was not even human technology. It was something she had recovered from a dead world 15 years ago, a weapon from a civilization that had been destroyed by the Dominion long before humans had reached the stars. The weapon fired, and reality twisted around the beam. It was not energy or matter. It was something else, something that the scientists who had examined it could not explain. All they knew was that it could destroy anything. The beam struck the Deathbringer's forward shields and passed through them as if they did not exist. It hit the hull and continued through, carving a path of destruction through the flagship's interior. The Supreme Commander's voice came through the communication system, and, for the first time, Ghost heard surprise in it. Impossible. That weapon, where did you get that weapon? From a species you destroyed. They left it behind, hoping someone would use it to avenge them. I am fulfilling their wish. She fired again, and another section of the flagship exploded. The Deathbringer's remaining weapons opened fire, but Ghost was already moving, circling the massive ship and striking at its vulnerable points. The battle became a dance, the small ship and the giant flagship trading blows in the void. Ghost took hits, her shields failing, her hull breaching in 3 places. But she kept fighting, kept firing, kept destroying. You are impressive, the Supreme Commander admitted. More impressive than I anticipated. But, even you cannot destroy my ship before my fleet destroys yours. Ghost glanced at her tactical display. He was right. The Dominion ships were closing in, forming a sphere around the battle. In minutes, they would have her surrounded. Not even her skills could save her then. But, she did not need to destroy his ship. She only needed to cripple it. She calculated trajectories, power levels, and structural weaknesses. The flagship's engines were protected by heavy armor, but there was a gap in the coverage where the exhaust ports vented. If she could hit that gap, she could disable the ship's propulsion. She made her decision and dove toward the flagship's stern. Weapons fire came at her from every direction, and she could not dodge it all. Her ship shuddered as impacts struck the hull. Warning alarms screamed. Systems began to fail. But she reached the gap. Her weapon fired one final time, the beam passing through the exhaust port and striking the engine core. The explosion was spectacular, a chain reaction that tore through the flagship's rear section and sent it spinning out of control. You may have disabled my ship, the Supreme Commander growled, but you have not defeated me. Your fleet will do nothing, Ghost interrupted. Look at your tactical display.
The Supreme Commander looked, and what he saw made him freeze. While Ghost had been engaging his flagship, the Alliance had not been idle.
A massive fleet had dropped out of faster-than-light travel behind the Dominion formation. 300 ships, fresh and ready for battle.
And, at their head was a message broadcast on all frequencies.
Dominion Fleet, this is Admiral Harrison of the Unified Planetary Alliance. You are surrounded. Surrender now or be destroyed. Ghost had known they were coming.
She had called for reinforcements before she even arrived at the border station. Her entire attack on the flagship had been designed to buy time, to keep the Dominion focused on her while the Alliance fleet moved into position. The Supreme Commander's voice came through one final time. This is not over, Ghost Actual.
I will find you again.
And, next time, you will not escape. I am not trying to escape, Ghost replied.
I am trying to win. And, I just did.
She turned her damaged ship away from the flagship and limped toward the border station. Behind her, the Dominion fleet began its surrender, 862 ships powering down their weapons under the guns of the Alliance fleet.
The battle was over. The war continued.
But, for today, at least, they had won. Commander Chen met Ghost at the docking bay, her face pale with shock and relief.
You did it. You actually did it. I watched the whole thing, and I still do not believe it.
Ghost stepped out of her ship, her flight suit torn and burned in several places. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, and she moved with the careful steps of someone running on empty.
The Alliance fleet did most of the work, she said.
I just kept the Supreme Commander distracted.
You crippled his flagship. By yourself. While 800 ships were trying to kill you. It was necessary.
Chen shook her head, unable to find words.
Ghost walked past her, heading for the station's medical bay.
Her body needed repairs.
Her ship needed repairs. Everything needed repairs. But they had one. And, for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Behind her, the tactical display showed the Dominion fleet being escorted away, their weapons disabled, their commanders in custody. It was the largest surrender in Alliance history.
And, it had been made possible by one woman in one ship with one call sign.
Ghost Actual.
The name that traveled with war. The prison station orbited a dead world at the edge of explored space. It had been built to hold the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy, beings who could not be rehabilitated or released.
Its walls were reinforced with materials that could withstand nuclear strikes. Its guards were heavily armed and trained to kill without hesitation.
And now it held the Supreme Commander of the Dominion.
Ghost stood in the observation room, watching the prisoner through reinforced glass.
He sat in the center of his cell, his massive form folded into something resembling meditation. Even in chains, even behind barriers that could stop a starship, he radiated power. He has been like this for 3 weeks, said the prison warden, a scarred woman named Torres.
He does not eat. He does not sleep. He just sits there, waiting. Waiting for what? Ghost asked. We do not know.
Some of the guards think he is dying.
Others think he is planning something. But, we cannot read his physiology well enough to tell. Ghost studied the Supreme Commander's face.
His scales had lost some of their color since the battle, fading from blood red to a darker, duller shade. His eyes were closed, but she knew he was aware of her presence. He had known the moment she arrived on the station. I want to talk to him, she said. Torres turned to her, surprised.
That is not recommended.
He has killed 3 guards who entered his cell. His strength, even with the chains, is incredible.
I am not a guard. Even so, I need to talk to him. There are things I need to understand before this war continues. Torres hesitated, then nodded slowly. Very well. But, I must insist on additional restraints. And, if anything happens, my people will fill that cell with enough firepower to vaporize anything inside. Understood. The additional restraints took an hour to install.
When they were finished, the Supreme Commander was bound to the floor by cables thick enough to moor a starship. His claws were encased in metal sheaths.
His legs were locked in place by magnetic clamps. Ghost entered the cell alone.
The Supreme Commander opened his eyes as she approached. They were yellow, with vertical pupils that tracked her movement like a predator watching prey.
"Ghost Actual," he said.
His voice was weaker than before, but still carried the weight of centuries of command.
"I wondered when you would come. You knew I would?"
"Of course.
You are a warrior. Warriors need to understand their enemies.
It is in our nature." Ghost stopped a few meters from him, close enough to speak quietly but far enough to react if he moved.
"I came to ask you a question." "Only one?" "I expected more."
"Why did you start this war?"
"The Dominion has territory spanning 3 spiral arms.
You have resources beyond counting.
What could you possibly gain by invading Alliance space?"
The Supreme Commander considered the question.
His tail twitched behind him, the only part of his body that could still move freely.
"You think I started this war for resources?
For territory? You understand nothing. Then, explain."
"I started this war because I was dying."
Ghost blinked. "Dying? You look healthy enough to me." "Not my body. My spirit. My reason for existing." He leaned forward as far as his restraints would allow.
"I have lived for 300 years, Ghost Actual.
I have conquered more worlds than you can imagine.
I have killed billions. And, somewhere in those centuries, I stopped feeling anything.
Victory became meaningless. Conquest became routine.
I was dead inside, waiting for my body to catch up."
"So you started a war to feel alive again?" "Yes." "Is that so different from what you do?" "I have studied your history, the battles you have fought, the impossible odds you have overcome. You are not fighting for the Alliance or for humanity. You are fighting because it is the only thing that makes you feel real." Ghost wanted to deny it.
She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she fought for justice and protection and all the noble causes that soldiers claimed. But the words would not come. Because somewhere deep inside, she knew he was right. "We are the same," the Supreme Commander continued.
"Two weapons who have outlived their purpose. Two killers who cannot stop killing. The only difference is that you pretend to be a hero while doing it. I am not pretending. I save lives. I protect the innocent. What you do is destroy and consume. And yet here you are, talking to me instead of celebrating with your allies.
Here you are, seeking understanding from a monster instead of accepting the gratitude of those you saved. Because you know that the gratitude means nothing. Because you know that tomorrow there will be another battle, another enemy, another chance to do the only thing that makes you feel alive." Ghost turned away from him, her hands clenching into fists. She could feel the truth in his words, the mirror he was holding up to her soul.
She hated it.
"The war will continue without me," the Supreme Commander said. "The Dominion will choose a new leader, someone hungrier, someone with something to prove. They will come again, and again, and again.
And you will fight them each time, because that is what you are." "That is all you are."
"No." Ghost's voice was quiet but firm.
"That is what I was. But things can change." "Can they?"
"You have been fighting for nearly 50 years.
What else do you know how to do?" She did not answer.
Instead, she walked to the cell door and signaled for it to open. "Ghost Actual," the Supreme Commander called after her.
"When the new war begins, I want you to remember this conversation. Remember that I saw the truth in you. Remember that we are the same."
The door closed behind her, cutting off his voice. Ghost stood in the corridor for a long moment, trying to steady her breathing. Her heart was racing, and her hands would not stop shaking. Torres approached her carefully.
"Are you all right? What did he say to you?" "Nothing I did not already know."
Ghost straightened her shoulders and pushed down the turmoil inside her.
Thank you for allowing the visit. I will be leaving now. Leaving? But, the celebration, I have another mission. The Dominion's eastern territories are weakening their border patrols. It is a good opportunity to gather intelligence. Torres looked at her with something between confusion and pity. The war is over.
The Supreme Commander is captured.
Do you not want to rest?
Ghost walked toward the docking bay, her steps steady despite the exhaustion weighing on her body. The war is never over, Warden.
It just changes form.
She reached her ship and climbed inside. The cockpit was dark, the systems on standby waiting for her command. She sat in the pilot's chair and stared at the controls without activating them. The Supreme Commander's words echoed in her mind.
We are the same. Two weapons who have outlived their purpose. Was he right? Was she nothing more than a tool of destruction, dressed up in heroic colors? Was the only difference between them the names they gave to their violence?
She thought about Dr. Elena Vasquez, still living on her quiet moon, still sending messages that Ghost never answered. She thought about Captain Chorus and his fleet, the grateful look in his eyes when she had saved his people. She thought about Commander Chan and the border station, the celebration that was happening right now without her. She could have stayed. She could have accepted their thanks, shared their joy, pretended for a moment that she was normal. But, the thought of it made her feel empty.
Worse than empty. Fake.
The Supreme Commander was right about one thing. The battle was the only place she felt real. The only place where her existence made sense. But, that did not mean it had to be true forever. Ghost activated her communications system and typed a message. It was short, just a few lines, but it took her longer to write than any tactical report she had ever composed.
Elena. I received your messages. All of them. I am sorry I have not responded. I am sorry for a lot of things. When the current situation is resolved, I would like to visit you. If you still want to see me. With love, always.
She sent the message before she could change her mind. Then, she activated her ship's engines and plotted a course away from the prison station.
The war continued.
The Dominion still had vast territories and powerful fleets. New leaders would rise to replace the Supreme Commander. New battles would need to be fought. But, for the first time in years, Ghost was thinking about what came after. Not the next battle, not the next mission, but the life she might have when the fighting finally stopped. It was a small hope, fragile and uncertain. But, it was hers. The Dominion Council met in emergency session for the second time in a month. The Supreme Commander's capture had thrown their government into chaos. Factions that had been suppressed for centuries were now fighting for power. Fleets that had answered to a single voice were now dividing their loyalties. High General Korvax stood at the head of the council table, his scales the deep purple of the noble caste. He was younger than most of the other leaders, barely 2 centuries old, but his military record was impressive. More importantly, he had the support of the Eastern Fleet admirals.
The Supreme Commander is gone, he declared.
His strategies failed. His invasion was crushed. It is time for new leadership. And, you believe that leader should be you? Asked Admiral Thessa, a rival from the Southern Territories. Her scales were blue-green, and her eyes held centuries of political cunning. I believe the leader should be whoever can win this war.
Our defeats have emboldened our enemies.
The Alliance is already discussing a counteroffensive into our territory.
If we do not act quickly, we will lose everything. Perhaps we should consider peace, suggested an older voice.
Chancellor Moran was the last surviving member of the original Dominion Council, the ones who had stood with the Supreme Commander when he first rose to power. His scales were gray with age, and his movements were slow.
3 centuries of conquest have gained us much.
But, they have also created many enemies.
Perhaps it is time to consolidate what we have. Peace? Korvax laughed. The Alliance will never accept peace.
They see our weakness and will exploit it. The only way to survive is to strike first, before they can organize. With what forces? The Supreme Commander took our largest fleet to the border.
Most of it surrendered.
Our military strength has been cut in half.
Then, we rebuild. We conscript. We do whatever is necessary.
The debate continued for hours, the council members arguing in circles. But Korvax could feel the momentum shifting in his direction. The others were afraid, and fear made people desperate.
Desperate people looked for strong leaders.
When the final vote was called, Korvax won by a narrow margin. He was now the acting Supreme Commander of the Dominion, with full authority over military operations.
His first order was to gather intelligence on Ghost Actual.
Find out where she came from, he told his spy masters.
Find out what she cares about. Find out how to hurt her.
With respect, Supreme Commander, the previous leader tried to confront her directly. It did not end well for him. I have no intention of confronting her directly.
That was his mistake.
He was a warrior, he thought in terms of combat.
I am a general. I think in terms of strategy.
What is your strategy? Korvax smiled, his teeth gleaming in the council chamber's dim light.
Ghost Actual protects the weak.
It is her defining characteristic, her greatest strength. But it is also her greatest weakness.
You cannot protect everyone. And, when she fails to protect someone she cares about, she will be destroyed. Not her body. Her spirit. How do we find someone she cares about?
She has no known family, no known friends.
Everyone cares about something. Find it. The spy masters bowed and departed.
Korvax stood alone in the council chamber, looking out at the stars that marked the boundary of his new empire. The war would continue. And, this time, the Dominion would win.
Ghost received the news 3 days later.
Her ship's communications system flagged an urgent message from Alliance intelligence, and she pulled herself out of the light sleep she had been allowing herself.
The message was brief and devastating. Dominion scout ships have been detected in the outer territories. They appear to be searching for something. Current analysis suggests they are looking for targets of opportunity.
Recommend enhanced security for any installations or individuals of strategic value. Ghost read the message twice, then pulled up a star map. The outer territories covered hundreds of systems, most of them lightly populated. There was no way to protect them all. But there was one location in the outer territories that mattered to her more than any other.
Elena's moon.
She plotted a course immediately, pushing her engines to maximum. The journey would take 6 hours at top speed.
6 hours of not knowing whether she was already too late.
The Supreme Commander's words echoed in her mind again.
Everyone cares about something. Find it. They had found it. They had found Elena.
And now Ghost was racing through space, hoping against hope that she could reach her in time. Her communications system chimed.
An incoming message, personal encryption.
She opened it and saw Elena's face on the screen.
Hello, dear, Elena said.
Her voice was calm, but Ghost could see the fear in her eyes.
I received your message. I was so happy to hear from you.
I have been waiting for you to write for so long.
Elena, listen to me. There are enemy ships coming. You need to evacuate. I know. I can see them from my window. 3 ships, I think. They are quite pretty, in a terrifying sort of way. Elena, I wanted to talk to you before they land.
I do not think I will get another chance.
Elena's smile was sad but genuine. I am so proud of you. Everything you have done, everyone you have saved. You became exactly what I hoped you would become. I did not become anything. You made me into this.
You trained me, modified me, turned me into a weapon. I gave you the tools, dear. What you did with them was your choice.
And you chose to protect people.
You chose to fight for the ones who could not fight for themselves.
That is not something I created.
That is who you always were.
Ghost's eyes burned.
She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision.
I am coming. Just hold on. I can be there in 6 hours. I do not think I have 6 hours. But that is all right. I have lived a long life. A good life. And I got to watch you become a hero. I am not a hero. I am just you are a hero. To the people you saved. To the colonies you protected. To me.
Elena's voice cracked slightly, but she held herself together.
Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you will keep fighting. Not because you do not know how to stop. But because you choose to. Because you believe in what you are doing.
Promise me you will find a reason to live that is not just survival.
Ghost could not speak.
The words caught in her throat, trapped behind years of emotional walls that were suddenly crumbling.
Promise me, Elena repeated. I promise. Elena smiled. Good. Now go save someone else. There is always someone who needs saving. The transmission ended.
Ghost stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned her attention to the navigation console.
6 hours. She had 6 hours to cross the distance and reach Elena's moon.
She pushed her engines harder, beyond the safety limits, beyond the design specifications. Warning lights flashed across her console. The hull groaned with the stress of acceleration. She did not care. She had to get there. She had to save the one person who still remembered who she was before the war. 4 hours later, her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The moon was visible on her sensors, a small green dot against the darkness of space. And, around it, 3 Dominion ships were in orbit.
Ghost scanned them quickly. Scout vessels, lightly armed, not designed for combat. They would be easy to destroy. But they had already landed troops on the surface. She dove toward the moon, her weapons charging. The Dominion ships detected her approach and began to move, trying to intercept her before she reached the atmosphere. She destroyed the first one before they could finish their turn. The second managed to fire a few shots, but her shields absorbed them easily. The third tried to run, but she was faster. 3 ships destroyed in less than a minute. But the troops were still on the ground. Ghost entered the atmosphere at combat speed, her ship screaming through the air. The surface rushed up to meet her, forests and lakes and small settlements blurring past. Elena's home was on the eastern continent, near the shore of a shallow sea. She could see smoke rising from that direction. Her ship touched down in a clearing 100 meters from Elena's house. The building was still standing, but the door had been kicked in. Dominion soldiers surrounded it, their weapons pointed inward. Ghost exited her ship and walked toward them. She did not run. She did not hide. She simply walked, her boots crunching on the ground, her eyes fixed on the soldiers. They saw her coming and raised their weapons. The squad leader shouted something in Dominion language, a warning or a threat. Ghost did not listen. She did not care. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution. When it was over, 9 Dominion soldiers lay dead on the ground. Ghost stepped over their bodies and entered the house. Elena was sitting in her chair by the window, looking out at the sea. Her hands were folded in her lap, and her eyes were closed. She looked peaceful, almost like she was sleeping. But she was not sleeping. Ghost knelt beside her, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch Elena's face. The skin was cold. She had been dead for hours. I was too late, Ghost whispered. I was too slow. She stayed there for a long time, kneeling beside the woman who had raised her. The woman who had seen the frightened child from New Haven and given her a purpose. The woman who had believed in her when no one else would. When she finally stood, something inside her had changed. The Supreme Commander had spoken of weapons who had outlived their purpose. He had been wrong. Her purpose was not to kill. It had never been to kill. Her purpose was to protect. To save.
to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. She had failed to save Elena. That failure would haunt her for the rest of her life. But it would not define her. She would not let it. Ghost carried Elena's body outside and buried her overlooking the sea. She marked the grave with a simple stone and stood beside it as the sun set over the water. "I promise," she said quietly. "I will keep fighting. Not because I do not know how to stop. Because I choose to. Because I believe." She returned to her ship and activated the communications system. A message went out on Alliance frequencies, directed at anyone who would listen. "This is Ghost Actual. The Dominion has crossed a line. They have attacked civilian targets. They have murdered innocent people to get to me. This will not stand. I am going to find the ones responsible, and I am going to make them pay. If you want to help, you know where to find me." The responses came in immediately. Captains who had fought beside her. Soldiers who had heard her stories. Civilians who had been saved by her actions. They all wanted to help. They all wanted to fight. Ghost looked at the list of names growing on her screen. She was not alone. She had never been alone. She had just forgotten how to let people in. It was time to remember. The final battle came 6 months later. Ghost had assembled a fleet of volunteers, ships from a dozen species who had all suffered under Dominion rule. They called themselves the Ghost Fleet, and their symbol was a simple gray circle, the color of her eyes. High General Korvax had prepared for their attack. His forces were dug in around the Dominion capital world, the seat of their empire for 3 centuries. He had gathered every ship, every soldier, every weapon that remained loyal to him. It was the largest battle the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of ships on each side, filling space with fire and death. Ghost led the charge in her small ship, weaving through the enemy formation just as she had always done. But this time, she was not alone. Behind her, the Ghost Fleet followed, each ship fighting with the same determination that had made her legend. The battle raged for 3 days. Both sides took terrible losses. But, slowly, inevitably, the Dominion forces began to fall back. On the 4th day, Ghost broke through the final defensive line and dove toward the capital world. Korvax's flagship hung in orbit, protecting the planet below. "Ghost Actual," Korvax's voice came through her communications system. "You have proven yourself a worthy opponent. But you cannot win this war by killing me. Another will take my place, and the cycle will continue." "I know," Ghost replied. "That is why I am not going to kill you. I am going to give you a choice." "A choice?" "Surrender. Accept peace. End the Dominion's expansion and learn to coexist with the rest of the galaxy. Do this, and the killing stops. Refuse, and I will destroy everything you have built. Not just your fleet. Not just your government. Everything." Korvax was silent for a long moment. Through her sensors, Ghost could see his ship preparing to fire. He was going to fight. Just like the old Supreme Commander, he was going to choose war over peace. But, then, something unexpected happened. "How do I know you will keep your word?" Korvax asked. "How do I know this is not a trick?" "Because I am tired," Ghost said. "I have been fighting for 50 years. I have killed more beings than I can count. And I am ready for it to end. Not because I cannot keep going. Because I do not want to. I want peace. Real peace. The kind that lasts. You want to stop fighting? I want to choose something else. I want to find out who I am when I am not at war. I want to live, not just survive." The silence stretched between them. Ghost waited, her finger resting on the weapon controls. Finally, Korvax spoke. "Very well. I accept your terms. The Dominion will stand down." The words hung in the void, impossible and, yet true. Ghost felt something inside her release, a tension she had been carrying for decades. "Thank you," she said.
Do not thank me. I am doing this because I believe you. Because I see something in you that I have not seen in any enemy before. What is that? Hope. The battle ended.
The Dominion fleet powered down their weapons.
Across the galaxy, communications networks carried the news of the surrender.
The war was over. Ghost sat in her cockpit and watched the Dominion ships begin their return to their own territory. Around her, the Ghost fleet celebrated, their voices filling the radio channels with cheers and songs and tears of relief.
She did not join them.
Instead, she plotted a course away from the capital world, away from the celebration, away from everything she had known. There was a small moon on the edge of explored space, overlooking a shallow sea. A grave marked with a simple stone.
A promise waiting to be kept.
Ghost activated her engines and began the journey home. The peace negotiations took 2 years. Ghost participated in some of them, lending her reputation to the process. But mostly she stayed on Elena's moon, rebuilding the house, tending the garden, learning to live in silence.
Visitors came sometimes.
Captain Chorus brought his children to meet the woman who had saved their world. Commander Chen stopped by on her way to a new assignment.
Even High General Korvac sent a message once, a simple acknowledgement of their shared understanding.
Ghost accepted them all with grace, but she did not seek company. She was learning to be alone without being lonely. Learning to find peace in small things, the sunrise over the sea, the growth of flowers in the garden, the sound of wind through the trees. On the 5th anniversary of the war's end, she received a message from Alliance Command. They wanted to give her a medal, a ceremony, a formal recognition of everything she had done.
She declined.
I did not do it for medals, she wrote back.
I did it because it needed to be done.
Honor the others who fought beside me. They deserve the recognition more than I do.
Instead of attending the ceremony, she visited Elena's grave.
The stone had weathered slightly in the years since she had placed it, but the inscription was still clear.
Elena Vasquez. She saw the hero in everyone.
Ghost knelt beside the grave and spoke quietly, as if Elena could still hear her.
I kept my promise. I found a reason to live that is not just survival. I chose something else.
She paused, struggling to find the right words.
I chose to hope. To believe that things could get better. And they did.
The wind picked up, carrying the scent of the sea. Ghost closed her eyes and let herself feel it, let herself be present in the moment.
I do not know who I am anymore. Not really. The weapon is still inside me, and I think it always will be. But it is not all I am. Not anymore. She stood and looked out at the sea.
The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and red.
It was beautiful. Simple and beautiful. Thank you, she said. For everything.
For giving me a chance to become something more than what I was made to be. For believing in me when I could not believe in myself. She turned and walked back toward the house. The garden was thriving now, filled with flowers and vegetables and life. She had planted it herself, with her own hands, the same hands that had once destroyed fleets. Tomorrow, she would work in the garden again. She would tend the flowers and harvest the vegetables and listen to the sound of the sea. She would read books and write letters and, maybe, if she was feeling brave, invite someone to share a meal. It was not the life she had expected. It was better. She had no recorded name. Only a call sign that had traveled with war. But the war was over now, and she was finding out what came next. Ghost Actual had become something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. A weapon that had chosen to become a person again. And, in the quiet of the evening, on a small moon overlooking a shallow sea, she smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in years. It would not be the last. The story of Ghost Actual spread across the galaxy in the years that followed. Children grew up hearing about the pilot who had faced impossible odds and won. Soldiers trained using her tactics. Historians wrote books about her campaigns.
But, the stories always got one thing wrong.
They spoke of her as a legend, a myth, something larger than life. They forgot that she had been a person. A woman with fears and hopes and dreams like anyone else.
On the 10th anniversary of the peace, a young reporter traveled to the outer territories to find the truth.
She had heard rumors that Ghost Actual was still alive, living in seclusion on a moon nobody visited. She found the house by the sea and knocked on the door. The woman who answered was older than the reporter expected, with gray hair and lines around her eyes. But those eyes were unmistakable. Steel gray, with a depth that seemed to hold entire galaxies.
"Are you Ghost Actual?" the reporter asked. The woman considered the question for a moment.
Then, she smiled, a warm expression that transformed her face.
"I was, once. But that was a long time ago. Now I am just someone who tends a garden and watches the sunset. The galaxy wants to know your story.
The real story, not the legends.
The galaxy already knows my story. They just do not realize it."
She stepped back and gestured for the reporter to enter.
"Come inside. I will make tea. And I will tell you the only part that matters."
They sat on the porch overlooking the sea, cups of tea warming their hands.
The reporter activated her recording device.
"What is the part that matters?" she asked. The woman looked out at the water, her expression thoughtful.
"The part that matters is not the battles. It is not the ships I destroyed or the enemies I defeated.
It is not even the people I saved, though that matters more than most things."
"Then, what is it?" "The part that matters is that I chose to stop.
After 50 years of fighting, after losing everyone I loved, after becoming something barely human, I chose to stop.
I chose peace. I chose hope. I chose to believe that the future could be better than the past." "Was it?" The woman smiled again. "Yes. Not perfect. Never perfect. But better. And that is enough. That has always been enough."
The reporter stayed for 3 days. She listened to stories about New Haven and Elena and the long years of war. She heard about the Supreme Commander and High General Korvax and the final battle that had ended the conflict. But the story she told when she returned was not about any of those things. It was about a woman who had found peace after a lifetime of violence.
A weapon who had chosen to become human again. The galaxy read that story and understood something important.
Wars ended not when one side destroyed the other, but when someone chose to put down their weapons and reach for something better.
Ghost Actual had shown them the way.
And, in doing so, she had given herself something she had never expected to find.
A name. Not a call sign. Not a designation.
A name, spoken by friends and neighbors on a small moon at the edge of explored space.
They called her Hope. It fit perfectly.
On the 15th anniversary of the peace, Hope received a visitor she did not expect. A young woman, barely out of her teens, with bright eyes and nervous energy.
"Are you Ghost Actual?" the young woman asked. "I used to be." "Who are you?" "My name is Maya. I came to ask you something." "Ask." Maya took a deep breath. "I want to be like you. I want to protect people.
I want to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves."
"Will you teach me?"
Hope looked at her for a long moment. She saw the determination in Maya's eyes, the hunger to make a difference. She saw herself, 50 years ago, standing in Elena's training facility.
"Why do you want to fight?"
"Because the galaxy is still dangerous.
Because there are still people who prey on the weak. Because someone has to stand against the darkness." "And, you think that someone should be you?"
"I think it could be.
If you show me how." Hope sighed and walked to the window. The sea was calm today, the water reflecting the clouds above.
She thought about Elena, about the gift she had been given and the promise she had made.
"Fighting is easy," she said finally. "Anyone can learn to fight. The hard part is knowing when to stop."
"The hard part is choosing peace when war is easier."
Can you do that? I do not know. I have never tried. Honest answer. Good. Hope turned back to face her.
If I train you, you will learn things that cannot be unlearned. You will become capable of terrible violence.
The question is whether you can also become capable of restraint. I can try. Trying is not enough. You have to succeed.
One failure, one moment of losing control, and everything you protect becomes another thing you destroy.
Maya did not flinch. I understand.
Hope studied her for a long moment, searching for doubt or fear or weakness.
She found determination instead. Very well. We begin tomorrow. Today, you help me in the garden. There is more to learn from growing things than from destroying them. Maya smiled, bright and eager. Thank you. I will not let you down. See that you do not.
They walked together into the garden, the old warrior and the young student. The sun shone down on them, warm and peaceful. The war was over. The future was uncertain. But, for the first time in her life, Hope was not worried about what came next. She had found her purpose, her reason for being.
Not fighting. Not killing. Teaching. Passing on what she had learned to a new generation.
The call sign Ghost Actual would fade into legend. But, Hope would remain, tending her garden, watching the sunset, and showing others the path she had found. The path from war to peace. From weapon to person. From darkness to light. She had no recorded name. Only a call sign that had traveled with war. But, the war was over now. And she had finally found her way home.